Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Navigation and Discovery podcast. My name is Josh Keller, and I count it a privilege today to be hosting this podcast with a man who normally hosts this podcast, Cameron Singh. A few weeks ago, I was on Instagram and saw Cameron making these incredibly wonderful posts from Aruba. And at the end of those posts, he said, "This was such an incredible experience. I can't wait to share more with you in the coming days." And I reached out to Cameron and said, "Cameron, you're always interviewing people. It's time that somebody interviewed you on your own podcast and let you share about these days in Aruba and the impact that it made on your life." And so today, that is what we're here doing. So, Cameron Singh, I'd love to welcome you to the Navigation and Discovery podcast right now.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. Thank you for actually reaching out and giving me the space to do this because I actually was thinking about ways I could, share what I learned from this recent experience that you mentioned. And thank you for creating this space and giving your gracious time to do this and to help me out.
You bet, bro. It's going to be such a good time. Now, for, any one of us, the idea of being in Aruba is a very attractive idea. Unpack with us a little bit how you got there, why you were there, and yeah, just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Aruba. What led me there is I've been connected to this group and community that Sam Chand has formed. And now Sam Chand is, I would call him a leadership guru, very much so in the church space. He does a lot of work with pastors, and he's a friend of John Maxwell. And been connected with his group for quite some time now. And his group helped publish my first book that came out, Navigation Discovery. And I've really enjoyed just being surrounded by a good group, a good community. And also, Sam's been a great voice into my life, even though a lot of the work that he does is pastoral or church work, I would call it. But all the principles that he teaches and writes about is very much applicable to myself as a business owner and business leader. And an opportunity came up which is his annual premier event, which he brings about 30 to 50 leaders with him to a location, such as Aruba. And really it's a retreat for people to get away and also learn really high level content that he hasn't really shared to a broader population. So this is really it's really tailored for pastors. So high level pastors. So there were about 49 other pastors in the room, and I was the only business leader in the room.
So, talk to me about what that felt like. Sam invited you to be part of this event, which is an honor, but you walk into that first gathering with all these pastors, a lot of their spouses there. You are single. Uh, some might say ready to mingle, but you're single and you're walking into this gathering of people who do very different things than you do on the daily. And talk to me about what that was like.
Yeah, so after a couple of days of just rest and relaxation and exploring Antigua, it was time for the opening dinner reception. And I went in there without any expectations because I'm like, I don't know how these work. I don't know who's going to be there. All I know is Sam and his team is going to be there. Those were the only people that I knew that are going to be there. And so I walk into the reception area where the dinner is being held, and I realized very quickly that this is a place that I probably don't belong in because all I was being introduced to is pastors. And I was like, why in the world did I decide to come here? Because this seems like more of a pastor's environment because all the conversations you hear is pastors talking to pastors and they're talking about church, they're talking about preaching. It's just all these sound waves that you're listening to kind of just across the room. And doubt started to sit in me pretty good. Like, oh, Why did I come to this?
Is it interesting though that in that moment you were struggling with, call it voices or a voice in
Hmm.
your head going, do you really belong here?
Yeah.
Is there really space for you here? How are you going to relate? And then literally one of the first things that Sam talked about while you were there was the power of voices.
Yeah. That was when when he opened up the session the following morning and started to talk about voices. I was like, oh wow. It's like that's what I was actually struggling with the previous evening and even the morning of, because these weren't just pastors. These weren't just your pastors of congregation of 50 or 100. These were really high level pastors leading thousands and thousands of people with a staff of hundreds and hundreds of people. And so I was like, what am I doing in this room? And it finally connected that voices. This is something that I've just haven't been struggling with the night before, the morning of. This is something I've been struggling throughout since I was uh, young teenager. This is something I've been struggling for so long.
It's interesting, isn't it? When we talked prior, you had talked about voices in your life that had spoken different things into you from early on about who you should be, what you should do. Talk to us about some of those voices and some of those things that they said to you when you were young. I would say even more impressionable maybe than you are now. Um, Unpack some of that.
Yeah, I think voices early on, I chose, I would say, what would be a non-traditional path, pursuing a career in aviation when someone like me normally goes into the medical field. So that was one where it was very non-traditional. And also one of the things that I have always been grateful for is my parents. Um, they they never were a negative voice in terms of the choices I made. They gave me the freedom to carve my own path and write my own story, which allowed me to real truly write my own story and carve my own path and go in a direction where I was self-fulfilled. And I wasn't fulfilling someone else's dreams, but I was fulfilling my dreams and what I wanted to pursue. But along the way, voices get in the way because I was doing a lot of things at a very, very young age that my peers weren't doing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't necessarily have the right voices in my life to encourage me. It was always a lot of doubt, always a lot of maybe lack of self-esteem and confidence in terms of what I was doing, and maybe even those first leadership roles that I talk about in my book, Navigation Discovery, is building that confidence because of all these voices tell you don't go this way, or voices tell you slow down, or you're not qualified to be in this space.
Now, it's interesting because you said something that I think maybe we need to unpack a little bit. You said, people like me normally would go into the medical field. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'm my background is of Indian culture, and choosing the traditional path of what a typical Indian person would do is pursue the medical path, or something like become a lawyer, where it's a career path that comes with prestige, I guess, in our culture's mind. It comes with prestige, but for me, thankfully, I wasn't pushed in that direction at all. Um, because my parents understood my passion and what I was interested in, and they're very non-traditional as well, which I was grateful for.
Well, so you get into this time with Sam, and Sam starts talking about voices. Unpack a little bit of what he said, because I think for most of us, we live in a spot day in and day out where voices create a lot of noise, and it's hard to know what voices to listen to, who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. In the world that we live in, the noise is greater than it ever has been. In the over information age that we live in, voices continually have a directing effect on people's decisions, what they think, what they fear, what they believe. And Sam dove into that in that first session to unpack a little bit about what he said that impacted you.
Yeah, one of the things that he started off saying, of course, all his teachings was from a church context, but a lot of this is applicable in my context, which is business. But what he was saying is like pastors today, they're not struggling with I mean, of course, everyone has struggles with the church and the structures of the church and all the things that come with leading a church. But where the root of the issue that he's finding is that pastors are struggling with voices. And I feel like this is applicable to all leaders and people of influence that are listening, is who are the voices in our life? Who is listening to our voices? And also, not just that, but how can we be the voice in someone else's life? What voice are we trying to be in other people? And oftentimes, where it starts is our inner voice, how we talk to ourselves, how we believe, our beliefs in our own abilities, our beliefs to take it to the next level, whatever that might look like. But then also, who are the voices in our life? And because do you have the right voices in your life? Or what voices are you listening to that are in your life?
Would you say that sometimes the voices that we listen to, it almost comes at this place of, I don't even know if this is a word, but unintentionality,
Hmm.
where we end up listening to voices that we're not intentionally going, man, I really want to listen to that voice. And all of a sudden we find ourselves having these voices speaking into our life that it almost feels like we didn't sign up for.
Yeah. And that's the thing that he was talking about is fighting those voices. And sometimes you're right. There's some voices that were so unintentional. It might have not even been directed to us, but we took it. We grabbed it and took it and infused it in our brain. And now we actually like believe that in ourselves.
One thing that I see too, and I would say this starts now younger than it used to, but it is more fanned into flame within the college environment. And there's sort of this concept that the person with the microphone or the person with the podium or the person with a certain amount of social media followers or the person with the Netflix special, I mean, whatever it is, these are the people that must know what they're talking about. And so I, number one, can trust what they're saying, and number two, need to follow what they're saying.
Mm,
And I think that that is contributing so much to a lack of intentional growth as individuals. Whereas we live in this over information culture, and we have this information coming at us nonstop, and we have such a lack of a filter as to what is true, what is not true, and what is applicable to me and what is not applicable to me, that I would say I think the next generation is becoming consumeristic in the way that they're taking in information, where they just sort of take it in and it almost just becomes part of who they are. And that's where it comes down to that sort of lack of intentionality. when it comes to who we're listening to, what we're taking in, and then who we're becoming as a result of it. And so this idea of voices really is crucial, because who we listen to and who we surround ourselves with is who we're going to become.
Hmm.
I have a feeling that there are things that you say to people that if they listen to Sam Chan, that they would go, he's like a little Sam, right? Like he's had
Hmm.
such an impact on you when it comes to the way that you see things, but you have intentionally stepped in to relationship and mentorship with him in a way that, because you really see the value in what he's bringing to you. And but there was something so interesting about Sam, right? So this confident guy has this big gathering in Aruba. He's got all these people coming to hear from him. But he even talked about the fight a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, it was very interesting towards the end of our time at that conference or retreat in Aruba. He talked about his struggle of fighting voices. And still to this day, he struggles with that. One, he was an immigrant from India with a very, very thick accent and started working as a janitor, cleaning bathrooms at a Christian university. Decades later, he's becomes the president of that university. And he's led several churches across the country, and now he helps pastors with succession planning. And one of the things that he talked about is even to this day, even with all the success that he's had, the churches that he's helped, the pastors that he's helped transform their lives through coaching or consulting, whatever that might be, he still to this day struggles that why are people coming to see me in Aruba? And that he feels so unqualified and so unworthy to be doing what he's doing,
Hmm.
and still struggles to fight those voices to this day. At I don't know, I think he's in his 70s, I think, by now.
Hmm.
And that's something that's a real struggle because I mean something you mentioned, Josh, is with technology today, there's so many voices out there, right? YouTube, podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, everyone telling you 5 steps to a successful life, or 1, 2, 3 steps, and you'll be wealthy. Um, and there's so many voices, but how do you not only choose to the voices to listen to, but how do you fight the voice that is telling you you're unqualified, you're not worthy to be where you're at today? You should just play it safe. You shouldn't step out of your comfort zone. Just play it safe. Just go in that safe route and live that true American dream with the what is it, with the white picket fence and your minivan, and live life in the safe zone.
Listen, be careful with the minivan comments, Cameron. Be careful with those. There's some good people with minivans, Cameron. But it's true. Now, there were some reasons why what Sam said resonated with you and it held weight with you. Unpack some of those, um, because I think it's important to sort of analyze if something's resonating with me, why is it resonating with me? And for you, it came down to your experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and one this is something that I never realized that I actually struggled with throughout my journey so far in life is struggling with voices, and Sam just packaged it together so greatly. Is I really been struggling with this throughout one, choosing a path in aviation, sitting in leadership roles at the age of 19, 20, 21, and sitting in roles that traditionally would be held by a person that was age 50 and above,
Mm,
and leading people that are twice my age. Um, and writing a book, starting a podcast, like all these things, I always felt that, why am I doing this? Stephen Furtick wrote a book a while ago called Unqualified, and it was talking about his experience is when there was a leader in the church, the big influential pastor was asked this question of one word that you think about Stephen Furtick, and the one word he said is unqualified. And that's something
mm,
that I resonate so greatly with, is like I've always felt unqualified to sit in these leadership roles, to get out of my comfort zone, to do more than what I'm expected. I was always one to go above and beyond what the expectation was for me, always stepping out and doing something new, presenting a new idea. And in all of that, of course, you get the spotlight, but I don't do it for the spotlight. Is I was really doing it to help my team get better, help my team get recognition, help help us get more funding for, a better budget for next year, so that we can serve our customers better. It it was never for the spotlight. And when the spotlight is put on you, like that's when you really start to question yourself. Like, I really don't want this. I really don't want this, or I really don't want that recognition. I just want things for my people or my team. Um, and that's something I struggled with, is those voices in my mind. And also not just that, but the voices that were speaking into my life, making sure that I was surrounding myself with the people that I needed. And oftentimes that meant people that were significantly older than me. Um, it was very hard to find those in my peers that I could have them speak life into me or be a voice in my life. And so what this did is this really validated my personal experiences that I had, and it finally made sense of everything that I was going through up to that date
mm.
in Aruba.
So, Sam, uh, I had asked you, I said, come up with three things that were kind of your big three takeaways from this conference. You spend 3 days in Aruba learning from Sam. Sometimes when you're in environments like that, it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose because it's coming at you hard and fast, and it's tough to be able to process everything. And just like when you're listening to a podcast, like how many things can you really process and then put into your life? So we've kind of set the stage for this up to this point. Why Aruba? Uh, you know, talking about voices, talking about validation. But if we were to walk away with three things vicariously through you that you experienced there and you heard from Sam, what would those three things be? Let's start with number one.
Yeah, so the first one that I wanted to unpack is, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. And this is something big because I always find myself in spaces I'm like, what am I doing here? Why did I choose to be here? Like, I really don't belong here, and I'm very uncomfortable. And everything I've done, from education to writing a book to starting a podcast, um, it's always been stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, just the book, just putting myself out there, that was not easy. To talk about my faith journey, which I've never publicly spoken about, to put just myself out there in general. Um, I never really wanted to do that, but I realized that I needed to, because in my heart, I realized I had a story to tell, and that even it could just help one person or a few, it would be well worth it. And now looking back, getting out of being in the uncomfortable has helped me grow in ways that I could have never imagined. Even just sitting and doing this, is being in the uncomfortable is really the only way you grow. And one thing that Sam said is If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing. If you stay comfortable all the time, you're going to become stale very quickly.
It's interesting. He talked about using old playbooks too, right? And he
Yep.
talked about how so often we use old playbooks because they're comfortable, because it's what we know. But then we find out that it's not working out. Um, and so what we really need to be able to step into is proximity and private conversations. They're going to help bring transformation even on our teams and to the people that we're working with. And so talk a little bit about how that idea of moving from comfort to discomfort can help even bring renewal in our organization, in our relationships. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's so true about the playbook. We have to write our own playbook and stop using the old ones. And oftentimes that's that's an area that provides a lot of discomfort, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your work, your church. Um, Being in the uncomfortable is truly the way you grow. And we'll go in the area of relationships. Um, you want to grow with the people that you are surrounding yourself with, is what you call friends. Um, Oftentimes friends just kind of scratch the surface. You know, you hang out, go and do all that, whatever that might be, golf, whatever, pickleball. But to really get deeper in your relationship with your friends that you trust, you have to get uncomfortable. Meaning, what are the things that you're struggling with on a day to day? Talking things through that you probably haven't talked about with others. That's just an example of getting uncomfortable. And when you go through that process and you talk about that issue with your friends, they're able to help you through it. And they're also able to help you hold you accountable as well. And that's where you truly grow. Yes, it might be uncomfortable to open up on, let's say, a mental health issue, or you're having issue at home, or you just feel empty. Your cup is empty, and your friends are there to help fill your cup. That's just an example there.
It actually is interesting because I feel like these sort of flow in. One is now flowing into two. And so the second takeaway from your time with Sam in Aruba was
I lost track. What is it?
it's you have the opportunity to
Oh
determine who
yeah,
you
that one.
surround yourself with, right?
Hmm.
People add value both ways. People who care for you and you also care for them.
Yeah, that's so true. And because Sam was talking about how you'll be lucky if you have just a couple of friends, because he's seen people come in his space, use him, and then throw him on the side of the street. And I feel like this is the way we approach our relationships too, is what can I get out of this person? So it becomes very transactional. But the reality is with relationships, mentorship, or whatever that might be, is you have to add value both ways with the people that you surround yourself with. It's not just what I can learn from this wise person, what I can learn from this CEO or this executive pastor. It's what value can I add both ways, so that person grows and I grow as well. And oftentimes, like, this could be really uncomfortable as well, because why would I want to challenge someone that I see as very, very wise? But not realizing that you have a different experience, different lens, different perspectives, and you're able to provide and add value both ways.
Yeah. It's interesting because in Sam's comments in Aruba, he said these things. He said, cherish who you are, who God has made you to be, letting him write your story rather than other people writing your story. And It's not what we do, it's who we are. And we can't have a two-way value in relationships if we're not committed to becoming who it is that God's made us to be, and stepping into that and then cherishing who he's made us to be. Because here's the thing, if we don't cherish who he's made us to be, we're going to have a hard time cherishing other people for who he's made them to be. Right? Love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm.
Right? I mean, that's a pretty it's a pretty big command from Jesus, right? Um, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so being able to surround ourselves with really good people only benefits us to the degree that we're willing to cherish ourselves, who God's made us to be, and then being able to step into that with other people. I think that's just like a gold mine, bro.
Yeah, I really like what you said on that, letting him write your story rather than other people writing your story for you. Because I've experienced it several times is where people tell you, oh, you should do this. Don't start your own business. Just do this and go on that safe path. And people give you advice where, and they haven't even had those experiences. Like, for example, one example is like getting marriage advice from a divorced person.
Now, they probably have some good advice.
They
I mean,
probably do. They
they've been
probably,
through tough stuff, right?
yeah. But someone that hasn't been through it or even had similar experiences, and yet they're telling you where you should go.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And uh I I almost think about it in the way of mentorship, right? So
Yeah.
you so even if we flip it and go, I'm considering marriage, I'm considering dating this gal and then, maybe getting married, and I want to have the right person speaking into me who has lived out what I value and what I want in a relationship, right? I feel like
Yeah.
that feels right
Yeah.
rather than just seeking that information from whoever will give it to you.
Exactly.
Because in the world of TikTok and Instagram Reels and Facebook posts, we see way too many people giving all kinds of advice that in some respects they don't have any business giving, which
Mm-hmm.
comes back to the noise, which
Yeah.
comes back to the intentionality in who we're listening to, right? My wife and I own a mental health practice. The amount of clients that walk in and go, "Oh yeah, I was on Instagram the other day and there was this reel and man, and all of a sudden they've got an Instagram therapist. They've got a TikTok therapist
Yeah.
or not therapists, but that's what they're treating them as. And so it's just so crucial to have the right people, but also to become the right person, right? And we need other people to become the right person, but we also need uh, to take those steps ourselves, which goes back to not letting someone else write your story. Frankly, letting God write your story and you stepping in to what his call is for you.
Mm.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not what we do, it's who we are.
Yeah.
Dash Sam Champ. There we go. Um, okay, so first one, number one, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. Number two, you have the opportunity to determine who you will surround yourself with. People who add value both ways, people who care for you, and also you care for them. Numero tres.
Is what voice or influence are you becoming for others? Because it's not just the voices within you, the voices that you're listening to, but it's also what voice are you becoming for others?
Like,
And
what are you doing in the day to day, right?
yep. And what opportunities are there that you might have missed with an interaction, just running your errands, right? How many times are we just tunnel vision and we have that tunnel vision when we go and do things, whether it's going to run errands, whether it's sometimes even at church. Sometimes you're just trying to get in, do your thing and get out, right?
Yeah.
What voice are you what voice are you being to others? Where can you pour into someone? Or or where can you have that influence to share the things that you've learned, the things that you are going through? Just like Sam, he's talking about not only things that he's been through, but what he's going through today, well, his struggle today, saying, "You are not alone in this. You are not alone in fighting the voices, the inner voices." It's it validates it validated what every pastor was going through or every leader was going through in that room by the fact of him saying that. Because yeah, there are times when even pastors sometimes when they approach the stage to start their sermon, a lot of them just don't feel qualified to be at that stage. They never did it to be at that stage. They did it to share the gospel and change lives just like it did for them. And that's where it started for them.
Yeah. I think sometimes we can live in fear that if we step into something that we've never done or that we've only done a few times, we don't know the outcome. And so there are all kinds of things that then line up as these fears or worries that could happen as a result of it. What if I walk up to the person at the grocery store and start talking to them, or I'm in the checkout line and I say something to them and they ignore me or they blow me off? What then? And I just think there are people every day longing to have people see them and know them. And if we are intentional, this word keeps coming back around, to see other people, how big of a difference is that going to make, not only in their lives, but in ours going forward? I just think sometimes it's even just the smallest things where we're willing to step in, we're willing to ask good questions. And as a result, people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel known. Man, is there anything that most of us want in this life more than feeling seen and heard and known? Man, we have a voice, we have an influence. No matter whether you are working the drive-through at the local Burger King, washing someone's car in a car wash, running a Fortune 500 corporation, pastoring a small town church of 75 people, teaching a class of 15 second graders, we have voice. We have a voice. We have influence. We just have to say, okay, God, like, am I willing to be hands open, ready for you to open the door for me to step into this? And I think that challenge of not becoming comfortable,
Mhm.
of um, determining who we surround ourselves with, having two-way healthy relationships, and stepping in to influence. Uh, all three of those fit so beautifully together. And it's almost like a beautiful progression, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. What you said is People want to feel heard and acknowledged, and that's really what it comes down to. And you have to value people. That's where it really starts with. You look at the life of Jesus, and all he really did is he valued people. It didn't matter where they came from, who they were, what they believed in. He just valued people. And so that's where it really starts with for us and those that are listening is truly valuing people and being that voice for someone. Because you never know in one interaction, it could really change a life for someone. Even just starting with a hello, how are you in the grocery store, you never know what that interaction could lead to.
For sure.
Or or even it's just hello, how are you? You never know, even that person just needed to feel like they are someone in this world. Whether or not you even go into conversation, just hello, how are you? Even for me sometimes, just hearing that is the best thing in my day sometimes. Because I was like, oh wow, yeah, I'm here. I have some meaning today. Someone actually acknowledged me,
Mhm.
and just by that could mean a lot for one person.
Mhm. Seen, heard, and known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's progression too. But um, one of the things that you had talked about is living with the why in mind. And when we look at these big three, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. Determine who you surround yourself with, adding, having people in your life that add value both ways, and utilizing your voice and your influence for the impact of others. Living with the why in mind is such a crucial thing because that is what is going to drive those things, correct?
Yeah, I I think it's really hard to find your why. I think that's the first thing is you really have to find your why in what you do. For example, my why when I entered the workforce and started on that aviation career path is I found so many people mentoring me, helping me in my career growth. I'm like, how can I do the same for others that are coming behind me? It's stepping into leadership roles.
Hmm.
Well, that's my why. That was my why is to really help others in their career growth as well and mentor them just like those have mentored me.
Yeah,
And sometimes we get into this trajectory of success or growth, whatever that might look like. And I've seen this too, is I've experienced this too, is we lose our sight of our
yeah.
why we initially stepped into this, and then our focus goes on to the success, the spotlight, the the praise, and then we want, and then that's what we want. We're going for that next praise. We're going for that next promotion. We're going for the next stage or platform, whatever that might be. And that's not really what I want. It's helping people, mentoring people, sharing my story and journey, and really making that impact in the next generation. And it can be hard to keep living in your why. And one of the things that I do is in front of my computer on the wall, it's my mission statement. And it's really the why and what I do. And so keeping centered or finding some type of rhythm to remind myself of my why and not let get the success to my head has been really helpful.
Hmm. Cameron, thanks so much for sharing those takeaways and those insights. Uh, Now, I feel like it might be good for us to to step into a couple things that are just really, really important when it comes to this whole experience in Aruba. And the first of which is this: what is the most fun thing that you did there?
The most fun thing I would say was traveling on my own. So I went to Aruba a couple days before because I've never been to that Caribbean island, and I'm like, I wanna really experience it because I knew when the retreat starts, it's pretty much you're busy, you're in sessions all day, and dinners and breakfasts, no time to explore. So the best part was really traveling on my own and experiencing the culture, seeing the different sites, just having that time to myself. Because I'm in a pretty busy season at the moment, and so it was just nice to rest, take time to myself, and um, and just really just rest.
Now, you go to these different areas of the world, and there are so many things that are unique to those areas in comparison to where we live and the culture that we experience day in and day out. What was the best meal that you had in Aruba?
Oh yeah, the best meal was I forgot the restaurant, but it was fried fish and fried shrimp. So it was a fried whole snapper and fried shrimp, and I went there actually twice to have it because it was so good. It's like a traditional Caribbean dish too, having like fried fish, and it's not the same as fried fish here. The fried fish here is trash compared to the fried fish out there. And
Hashtag hot take. Hashtag hot take, Cameron Singh. So did they bring the entire fish out? Like would
the
they
en the entire fish in a basket with the shrimp. Yep.
did you did you just like chop the head off, or did you dig a little bit into the head too?
No, you dig into the head a little bit too. That's actually the most flavorful part.
Stop it.
Yep, yep. It's the most flavorful part of the fish.
Those of you going to Aruba anytime soon, fried fish, fried shrimp,
Hmm.
get it. Get
Yep.
it. One of the things you talked about is solo traveling, and I think some of us who are introverted might enjoy solo travel, the idea of being sort of refueled by being by yourself. Some of us that are extroverted might struggle with the idea of solo traveling, and especially people who are married, have kids, those sorts of things. Now, obviously, you're not married, you don't have kids, but what are some of the benefits of solo traveling that even for someone like me, who's married, has kids, hasn't taken a trip by himself in a really long time? What are some of those benefits that I think maybe could be good for someone who's even has those kind of relationships in their life?
I think the first thing, it clears your mind. That's why I do it because it clears your mind. You're able to get away and you're able to unplug. I think that's another element too, is how much are you unplugging wherever you're going with technology or whatever that might look like, emails and your work. Um, but I think it's clearing your mind, but I think also being more present. That's often I'm very challenged with staying present because my mind's always running.
Yep.
But it's helped me stay in the present, but it's also allowed me to meet new people and
Mm,
experience the culture. Because one thing I realize is when you're by yourself, people are very curious. Who are you? First of all, why are you by yourself? What's your story? People want I've experienced this so many times, more so in the Caribbean, just because it's such a that family style culture
yes.
where they all value people, and
Yes.
doesn't matter who you are, that they just value people. And I've met some people just by going to eat at a restaurant by myself, going to eat breakfast on my own. Um, is just so amazing to have the conversations, whether it's the waiter, the waitress, or hotel staff. It's just so amazing to have those little interactions here and there. That the traditional family going in a hotel may not have, because they just want to check into the hotel, go to the room, and start their vacation.
Yeah.
And you realize you start being a bit more intentional in everything that you do.
Mm, mm. That's super cool. Yeah. When you have a split focus in anything, uh, something is not going to get your attention.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and you're able to do what you want, right? Because the reality
yes.
when you're in a group or you're with a
Yeah.
partner or whatever, you oftentimes don't agree on the things that you want to do on vacation.
Yes.
So I got to do whatever I wanted to do at the time that I wanted to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's so awesome.
yeah.
So fun. Um, for those of us that are interested, uh, give us just info on being able to follow Sam. I think, people know your information. They're connected to this podcast, but when it comes to Sam, for those of us that maybe want to learn a little bit more from him, be blessed by his content, where are we finding him?
Yeah, so there are two different websites that I'm going to give you all if you're interested. The first one is samchan.com. And so that's where you'll find, give me a minute here. The first one is samchan.com. That's where you'll find Sam's content, and that's where you'll find his books. He has a leadership institute where you pay as you go, pretty much whatever you want. It's a leadership certification to kind of consume his content and go through that. And then there's also a faith magazine that he quarterly publishes, Avail, and you can find that at theartofleadership.com, and also books that he's published, and also other leaders that have published under his publishing company as well.
Sweet. Samchand.com.
Mm-hmm.
SAMCHAND.com.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Cameron, anything else you want to share with us before we head out for today?
No, I think it's just really going back to what we talked about early on. Starting this off is asking yourself, who are the voices in your life? Who is hearing your voice? And how can you be the voice in someone else's life?
Yeah.
But also, how are you fighting those voices that are saying, no, you're not qualified? No, play it safe.
Yeah.
No, don't get uncomfortable.
Yeah. I feel like there's such a delicate balance, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because you want wise people in your life. And sometimes wise people in your life are going to say, hey, based off everything that I know about this situation, this might be the best road for you, right? We need to listen to wisdom, but
Mm-hmm.
we also have to be so careful with who
Yeah.
those wise people are that
Yeah.
we put in our lives,
Yeah.
right?
So true.
Not just people that have an opinion, but people that are wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good word, man. Such a good word. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today on the Navigation and Discovery podcast. I am your one-time host, Josh Keller, and thanks, Cameron Singh, for making this a special time for all of us.
No, thank you for helping me create the space to kind of share a word that I had in my heart based on my takeaways from this conference. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this bonus episode that I was able to drop on my recent experience in Aruba. And I really hope this shed light on really the voices. If you're struggling with voices, who are the voices that you're listening to? What are the voices that you are being for others? And who are you speaking into as well? What voice are you being for others? And also, what are the voices that you need to fight? So I know this is a daily struggle for me, and I really hope that this was a great time for self-reflection for you. So I appreciate you tuning in, and in a couple days, we'll have another episode releasing with my guest, Troy Hadid. He is someone that I was able to connect with, and he just released a book on love. It's called My Name is Love, and I'm so excited to share this conversation that I had with him, and you are going to enjoy this interview. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, feel free to subscribe so you get the notification when the episode is released on Tuesday. And also, if you haven't gotten a copy of my book, Navigation and Discovery, you can go to CameronSingh.com, my website, and get your copy today in whichever format you would like. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on another episode in just a few days. Thank you.